I woke up to the smell of coffee, or maybe it was his cologne, heavy and sweet, drifting into my senses before my brain fully registered what was happening. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then I felt the warmth of his body pressed against mine, and my eyes snapped open. It was true. I was in bed. With him. Dylan Hart, the golden boy of high school basketball, my best friend's literal obsession since freshman year. The guy who had posters plastered across every wall, whose Instagram photos made girls and guys alike swoon, and who now was staring at me with an expression that balanced between sheepish guilt and a strange, vulnerable uncertainty I had never seen before. You're awake? His voice was rough from sleep, cracking slightly like it couldn't fully disguise the embarrassment or maybe the thrill off the situation. I blinked. My mouth opened, then closed. My mind raced 1,000 miles per hour, and the words that finally came out were a whisper, a mix of disbelief and accidental humor. You're smaller than I imagined. Dylan blinked once, then twice, and the corner of his mouth twitched upward. Wow, way to start the day, genius. I groaned, sinking further into the blankets, trying to comprehend what had happened. My best friend, Sean, would kill me if he ever found out. Or worse, he'd hate Dylan forever. And yet, here we were, our knees brushing, our hands dangerously close, our breaths mingling. It wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to stay in our lanes. Dylan was untouchable, untouchably famous, untouchably out of reach. And I was me. The guy who spent most of his life quietly cheering from the sidelines, making terrible jokes to cover up awkwardness, and pretending that my feelings were strictly platonic. But last night had been different. Started at Sean's birthday party. A low-key gathering at his parents' house. Nothing fancy, just a few friends, pizza, and the unbearable glare of adulthood creeping in on us all. Dylan had shown up because, naturally, Sean invited him. And I had laughed at all his jokes, teased him, teased everyone, and somehow ended up walking Dylan home after everyone else had passed out. I don't usually do this, he had said, leaning against my shoulder as we walked down the quiet streets, streetlights painting our shadows long and thin. Walk home with someone who isn't my girlfriend or, well, who isn't anyone famous. I had laughed nervously. Yeah, I get that a lot. People expect me to be boring or invisible. He had tilted his head, studying me, and suddenly it wasn't a joke anymore. The playful glint in his eye had softened into something more intimate, more searching. And before I knew it, his hand brushed mine. And then the world shifted. One step led to another, one glance led to another, and suddenly here we were, tangled up in sheets with the morning sun creeping through the blinds. I still didn't understand the why of it all. I don't know how this happened, I admitted finally, voice trembling as I shifted slightly, trying to create some distance while simultaneously hoping he wouldn't move. I mean, you're Dylan Hart, and I'm me, your best friend's best friend. Basically a background character in the story of your life. His laugh was soft this time, no teasing, just warmth. And yet, here you are. Somehow, the main character now. I wanted to argue, to say this was a mistake, to somehow rewind time. But my heart refused. There was a part of me, deep down, that had always known this could happen, had always wanted it to. Dylan was magnetic. Not just because of his fame or skill, but because of the way he listened, really listened, when he cared. The way his eyes lingered on small details no one else noticed. The way he made people feel seen. And now, the intimacy of this moment was blinding. I swallowed hard. What happens now? He tilted his head, as if considering it. Now? And then he smirked, mischievous again but quieter, less performative. Now, we figure out if this thing is worth fighting for. Even if the world hates it. Even if the world hated it. Those words sank like stones in my stomach. He wasn't just talking about high school gossip or jealous classmates. Dylan's life was public. Everything about him was public. If this got out, our lives could be turned upside down. My life, Sean's life, Dylan's life, everyone's life intertwined with ours could be ruined. But despite the fear, despite the looming storm, there was something thrilling in the truth. Something exhilarating in the way our hands brushed under the sheets, in the quiet vulnerability of seeing him without all the trophies, the crowds, the perfect smiles. We had 2 hours before Sean woke up. 2 hours before reality returned with all its rules and expectations. And for the first time, neither of us cared. Dylan's apartment, or more accurately, Sean's guest room that he had generously offered Dylan, was quiet except for the hum of the city outside. Cars passed slowly along the streets, their headlights streaking across the walls in lazy patterns. I sat up slightly, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed, trying to steady my racing heart. "You think this is going to work?" I asked, voice low. He leaned back on his elbows, chest bare under the soft morning light. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "I just want it to. With you." I froze. His words weren't loud, weren't dramatic, but the sincerity in them was crushing. Every fiber of my being wanted to run away, to pretend this hadn't happened, to protect the fragile structure of our friendship and my loyalty to Sean. But every fiber also wanted to stay, to lean in, to explore this forbidden territory, to see where it led. "I want that too," I whispered, almost afraid my words might vanish in the quiet room. And then he was close again, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, close enough that our knees touched, close enough that the weight of possibility hung between us, heavier than any secret we had ever carried. We didn't speak for a while. We didn't need to. The silence was comfortable, charged with something that neither of us could name but both understood. A connection that defied labels, defied expectations, defied the small-town rules that had governed our lives for too long. Finally, Dylan broke the quiet. "You know, I've always thought you were different. Quiet, yes, but not invisible. You notice things, remember things, care about things no one else does." I laughed softly, nervously. "That's one way to put it." "No," he insisted, sitting up fully, eyes locked on mine. "It's true. And I've admired that about you, probably longer than I should have." The words were a knife and a bomb at the same time. Painful because of the secrecy, comforting because of their honesty. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing, letting my gaze linger, letting my heart decide. Then he reached out, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. "We don't have to figure everything out today, or tomorrow, or ever," he murmured. "Just let's start with this. Just us." And in that small sunlit room with the city stretching endlessly beyond the window, I realized that maybe, just maybe, we could survive everything. Maybe love didn't have to be loud, didn't have to be public, didn't have to fit the neat little boxes everyone else expected. Maybe it could just exist. The first day of the rest of our complicated, scandalous, beautiful story had begun. The city outside had awakened to its usual chaos: car horns, the distant roar of buses, and the occasional bark of a dog echoing from some far alley. Inside Sean's guest room, time seemed to move differently. Dylan and I existed in a bubble, a fragile cocoon where the rest of the world with its rules, its expectations, its judgments didn't matter. We didn't speak much that morning. Words felt heavy, unnecessary. Our glances, the brush of fingers, the shared laughter over small, private jokes, that was enough. But eventually, reality poked its nose through the cracks. My phone buzzed violently on the nightstand, Sean's name flashing across the screen. I froze. Dylan leaned over to glance at it, his brow furrowing. "Should I? Don't?" I whispered, catching his hand before he could touch the screen. "Not yet." The text wasn't urgent, Sean, probably just checking in, but the reminder of our precarious situation made my chest tighten. I was already imagining the conversation that could ruin everything. How to explain being alone with Dylan, how to dodge questions about the obvious closeness, how to prevent a fallout that might fracture friendships permanently. Dylan seemed to sense my panic. He leaned closer, his voice soft. "Hey, look at me. Whatever happens, we'll handle it. Together. Just trust me on that." I nodded, grateful for the reassurance, though the knot in my stomach didn't fully loosen. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe that this strange, beautiful thing that had ignited overnight could survive the outside world. After a while, we got up, showered, and got dressed. There was an awkwardness in the air, small, nervous gestures, brushing past each other, pretending not to linger on the subtle electricity that clung to us. But under that awkwardness, a thrill pulsed through me. Every brush of his hand, every accidental touch as we moved around the room, set my heart racing. When we finally made it downstairs, Sean's parents were in the kitchen, oblivious to the tension upstairs. I poured myself a cup of coffee, pretending to be normal. Dylan leaned against the counter, tossing me a grin that was both teasing and intimate. "You're ridiculously easy to tease," he said. I rolled my eyes but couldn't hide my smile. "Yeah? You're ridiculously easy to annoy." The banter was comforting, a reminder that despite the chaos of the morning, we could still exist in normalcy, even briefly. The next few days were a delicate dance of secrecy and stolen moments. Every glance, every touch, every whispered word had to be calculated, disguised under the pretense of casual friendship. We were both acutely aware of the social stakes. Rumors spread like wildfire in high school. One careless word could ruin reputations, friendships, even dreams. But the chemistry between us was undeniable, a magnetic pull that made it impossible to maintain distance for long. One afternoon, we found ourselves alone in the school gym. Sean had been called to a meeting, and the gym was empty except for the echo of bouncing basketballs. Dylan picked up a ball and dribbled it effortlessly, the rhythmic sound filling the silent space. "Care to challenge me?" he asked, tossing the ball toward me. I caught it awkwardly, fumbling at first. "I think you'll regret that," I muttered, tossing it back with less finesse than intended. The game was chaotic, laughter echoing off the walls, playful competitiveness hiding the tension that neither of us fully admitted. And yet, every time our hands brushed, every time we collided mid-dribble, my chest tightened with the thrill of proximity. "Stop thinking so much," Dylan teased, leaning close after a particularly awkward fall where our shoulders had pressed together. "Just feel it." I swallowed hard. "Feel what?" "The .us," he whispered, eyes locking on mine. "The thing no one else sees." The words sent a shiver down my spine. He was right. No one else could see it, not the school, not Sean, not anyone. And maybe that was the only reason it could exist at all. In these stolen, private moments, away from judgment, away from the expectations of the world. But secrecy comes with its own dangers. Gossip began to swirl, subtle whispers of students noticing Dylan lingering around me more than usual, of small gestures interpreted out of context. I tried to shrug it off, but the anxiety gnawed at the edges of every interaction. One afternoon, Sean confronted me in the hallway. His face was tight, eyes searching mine for answers. "Are you hanging out with Dylan a lot?" he asked, voice careful but laced with suspicion. I froze, caught between honesty and the fear of betrayal. He walked me home a few times," I said cautiously. "We study together sometimes." Sean's brow furrowed. "Just be careful, okay? People are talking." The words stung, not because I didn't care about what he thought, but because they were a reminder that our little world of intimacy was fragile. One wrong move could shatter everything. Dylan sensed my tension later that day. We met at our usual spot by the river, where the city's noises softened into a distant hum, and the water reflected the late afternoon sun in shimmering patterns. "You're worrying too much," he said, taking my hand in his. The contact was electric, grounding. "We'll figure it out. Sean will understand eventually, or maybe he won't. But I don't care. I just care about you." The simplicity of the statement, the honesty, made my chest ache. I wanted to argue, to deny the feelings, to maintain the safe walls I had built around myself. But looking at him, I couldn't. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, voice breaking slightly. "Then don't think. Just be." We sat there for a long while, fingers intertwined, watching the sunlight fade. For a brief moment, the world didn't exist beyond the river, the city skyline, and the fragile bubble we had created. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between secrecy and desire became harder to manage. Dylan and I were constantly navigating a minefield of social expectations, friendship loyalties, and our own fears. But with every challenge, our connection deepened. Late one night, after a school event, we found ourselves on the rooftop of the gym. The city sprawled below in a tapestry of lights. The wind was cold, whipping through our hair, and the silence between us was comforting. "I think people suspect," I murmured, staring at the skyline, trying to ignore the way his presence made my heart pound. "Let them," he said, leaning close. His hand brushed my cheek, a gentle touch that sent sparks through my body. "We're not hurting anyone. We're just .us." I swallowed, heart in my throat. "It's not that simple. Sean. He's my best friend. And this is complicated." "I know," Dylan said softly. "But sometimes the things worth having are complicated. Sometimes you have to risk everything for this." He gestured between us. "For us." And in that moment, standing on the edge of the world with the city lights below, I realized he was right. The fear, the secrecy, the potential fallout, it was all worth it for this rare, beautiful connection that had sparked unexpectedly, fiercely, and irreversibly. We leaned into each other, a tentative kiss that spoke volumes of desire, caution, and an unspoken promise. The world below could judge, gossip, or misunderstand, but up here, under the night sky, nothing else mattered. Over the following weeks, we developed our rhythm, learning the delicate balance between hiding and living. Each glance, each touch, each whispered joke became a language only we understood. And slowly, imperceptibly, the fear of discovery transformed into strength. We were no longer just a secret. We were a choice to embrace something real, something rare, something worth the risk. And in that choice, we found a freedom we hadn't known existed, a freedom that made the stolen moments of intimacy even more precious. Even with the challenges ahead, the gossip, the potential heartbreak, the fear of losing friendships, who were no longer afraid, because we had found each other, in all the chaos, all the uncertainty, and all the unexpected beauty of teenage life. And for the first time in a long time, I believed that love, even messy, complicated, and unconventional, could survive. By mid-October, the air had taken on that crisp edge that made everything feel alive. The leaves along the suburban streets were a fiery mosaic of reds and golds, swirling around our feet as Dylan and I walked home from school. The world outside seemed almost picturesque, serene, deceptively calm compared to the storm brewing quietly beneath the surface of our lives. Rumors had started to circulate more persistently. Whispers in the hallways, sidelong glances, subtle jokes that weren't quite funny, they were everywhere. At first, I tried to ignore them, pretend it wasn't happening. But the tension was starting to claw its way into my chest like an uninvited shadow. One afternoon, Sean cornered me by my locker, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen. "Look," he said, voice low, almost pleading. "I know something's going on between you and Dylan. I don't want to hear a lie. Just be honest with me." I felt the walls I had built crumble. For a brief, terrifying moment, I thought about running, about hiding in the safety of silence. But I couldn't. Not anymore. "Sean," I hesitated, the weight of truth pressing down on me. "It's complicated, but it's real. At least for us." His eyes searched mine, a mixture of betrayal, confusion, and something softer, concern, maybe even fear. "You're serious? With him?" I nodded. "I am." For a moment he was silent. The world seemed to shrink to the narrow hallway between lockers, the autumn light filtering through the windows. Then he sighed, leaning against the wall. "You're my best friend," he said finally. "And I don't want to lose you. But this is going to be messy." "I know," I whispered. Dylan, unaware of the confrontation with Sean, had been practicing late at the gym. The rhythmic bounce of the basketball, the squeak of sneakers on polished wood, and the echo of his voice calling out drills filled the empty space. When I walked in, he looked up, sweat glistening on his forehead, chest heaving with exertion, and for a moment, I forgot the tension of the outside world. "You're late," he said, trying to sound annoyed, but there was a sparkle in his eye. "I had stuff to deal with," I said vaguely, sinking onto the bleachers. He approached, leaning against the railing above me. Stuff? What kind of stuff? I hesitated. How much should I tell him? How much could he bear? It's Sean. He knows something's happening. He's worried. About me. About everything. Dylan's expression softened, and he crouched down so that our eyes met. And what do you want me to do about it? Be patient. We can't be reckless. Not yet. Dylan smiled, a small, teasing grin, though the concern in his eyes betrayed him. Patience isn't exactly my strong suit, but I'll try for you. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. My heart was heavy with anxiety, but also alight with anticipation. The truth was out of the bag at least partially, and there was no going back. Yet every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dylan smile, the warmth of his hand, the way his eyes lingered on mine, and I couldn't bring myself to regret a single moment. 2 weeks later, the tension erupted. It happened during a school basketball game. Dylan was on the court, every eye in the gym glued to him, but I was in the stands, trying to appear casual while my stomach twisted in knots. Halfway through the second quarter, someone's phone camera flashed, capturing a moment when Dylan had leaned too closely to me in the hallway before the game. Within hours, the photo had spread like wildfire through social media. I wanted to sink into the floorboards, to disappear, but Dylan found me in the stands after the game, his expression unreadable. We need to talk, he said, voice low, intense. I followed him out into the parking lot. The night was cold, the autumn wind whipping around us, carrying with it the distant sounds of celebration from other games, oblivious to our drama. They're talking, I whispered. Everyone's talking. This is too much. Dylan took my hands in his, and for the first time his touch felt like armor. Let them talk. Let the world have its opinions. We know the truth, don't we? That's what matters. I shook my head, panic rising. It's not just opinions. People can ruin things. Sean. He'll be devastated. You could lose scholarships, attention. Everything. He pulled me closer, eyes fierce. And we'll survive. Together. That's all that matters. In the days that followed, the gossip intensified. Hallways that once felt safe became battlegrounds of whispers and stares. Messages flooded my phone, some supportive, some cruel, and some that made my chest tighten with shame. Sean was hurt, distant, unsure how to reconcile his feelings of loyalty with the reality of our relationship. And yet, despite everything, Dylan and I clung to each other. Each secret text, each stolen moment in empty classrooms, each shared smile across crowded hallways became a lifeline. Our connection deepened, not just in romance, but in trust, vulnerability, and understanding. One rainy afternoon, we found refuge in a quiet cafe near the edge of town. The rain streaked down the windows, blurring the world outside. Dylan tucked his hand into mine under the table, his thumb brushing along the back of my hand in a comforting rhythm. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded, even though my chest felt heavy with fear. I think so, as long as you're with me. He smiled, leaning across the table to brush his lips lightly against my forehead. I'm not going anywhere, ever. In that moment, the chaos outside, the whispers, the judgment, the fear didn't matter. It was just him and me, cocooned in a small, quiet world that belonged entirely to us. But peace was fleeting. The first major confrontation came when Sean finally confronted Dylan directly. It was in Sean's living room, a quiet, tense evening that had started innocuously enough with homework and ended in explosive emotion. I don't understand why you're doing this, Sean said, his voice trembling. You're my best friend's my friend. And now you're with him? Are you serious? Dylan didn't flinch. He looked Sean in the eyes, steady and unwavering. Yes, I'm serious. Care about him. And I respect you, Sean. But this is real. I'm not going to apologize for it. Sean's shoulders slumped, a mixture of hurt and helplessness painting his face. I just don't want to lose either of you. You won't lose us, I said, stepping forward. You just have to understand. We can't hide forever. And maybe it's scary, but it's worth it. For the first time, Sean said nothing, just stared. And then, slowly, he nodded. Not enthusiastically, not happily, but with reluctant acceptance. The weeks that followed were a delicate balance of normalcy and rebellion. School life continued. Dylan's basketball schedule dominated evenings and weekends, and I tried to maintain my own routine amidst the chaos. But through it all, we found small sanctuaries of intimacy: late-night walks, quiet study sessions, shared meals, whispered confessions, and the simple, unspoken reassurance of holding hands in public spaces where it was still relatively safe. One evening, as autumn deepened into early November, Dylan and I sat on the hood of his car, parked on a hill overlooking the city. The skyline stretched out before us, a sprawling tapestry of lights, traffic, and life moving forward regardless of our private turmoil. "I've been thinking," Dylan said softly, leaning his head against mine, "about what comes next. About college, about scholarships, about everything." I shivered slightly, pressing closer. "Me too. I don't want this to end when we have to go our separate ways." "Then we won't let it," he murmured. "We fight for it. For us, no matter what anyone else thinks." I felt a surge of hope, tempered by the reality of obstacles ahead. But looking at Dylan, feeling his warmth, seeing the determination in his eyes, I believed him. I believed in us. We kissed then, gently at first, savoring the quiet intimacy of the moment, the world stretching endlessly around us. The city, the autumn wind, the uncertainty of the future, it all seemed to fade away, leaving only the undeniable truth. We belonged together. Winter settled over the town like a soft blanket, transforming familiar streets into a shimmering landscape of frost and snow. The air was sharp, but it carried a clarity that mirrored the feelings swirling between Dylan and me. After weeks of tension, secrecy, and whispered confessions, something had shifted. We were no longer just surviving in stolen moments, we were ready to claim our space in the world. Together. The challenges hadn't disappeared. Gossip still lingered in hallways, subtle stares in classrooms reminded us that the world was watching, and scholarship pressures loomed over Dylan like a storm cloud. Yet something fundamental had changed. Sean had accepted the reality of our relationship, even if it took him time to fully understand it. That tentative acceptance was a lifeline, a proof that loyalty and love weren't mutually exclusive. It started one Friday afternoon, during the last basketball game before winter break. The gym was packed, the crowd buzzing with energy, and the scoreboard glimmered in the harsh fluorescent lights. Dylan was focused, every movement precise, every shot calculated. Yet there was a calmness in him I hadn't seen before. Perhaps it was the knowledge that whatever came next, we were ready to face it. I sat in the stands, wrapped in a scarf Sean had lent me, watching him glide across the court. My heart swelled with pride and an undeniable ache, knowing how much this boy meant to me and how far we had come. Then it happened. A tumble on the court, a careless collision with another player, and suddenly Dylan was on the ground, wincing in pain. The gym fell silent, the crowd holding its collective breath. I leapt from my seat, rushing to his side as the coach and medical staff approached. "Are you okay?" I asked, kneeling beside him, my hands brushing against his in a reflexive gesture that sent a shiver up my spine. "I'm fine," he said, though the pain was evident in his tight jaw and furrowed brow. "Just a sprain. Nothing serious." But even through the discomfort, he smiled at me. "See? I told you I could handle it." "You almost didn't," I muttered, shaking my head. He laughed softly, leaning into my touch for reassurance. "Yeah. Well, maybe I like you fussing over me." And just like that, amidst the adrenaline, the sweat, and the murmurs of concerned spectators, we were ourselves again, two hearts entwined, defiant, and unafraid. The real test, however, came after the game. A local sports blogger had somehow captured a candid photo of Dylan and me sharing a brief, unguarded moment in the stands, our hands brushing, eyes locked, oblivious to the world. By the next morning, the image was everywhere online. Comments ranged from supportive to cruel, from curious to judgmental. It was the moment I had feared, the culmination of months of secrecy. I sat in Dylan's car outside the school, snowflakes drifting lazily across the windshield, and I felt the panic rise again. This is bad. Really bad. Dylan took my hand, squeezing it gently. It's scary, yes, but we're still here, together. Nothing else matters. I wanted to believe him, and I tried, but the weight of reality pressed down like a heavy snowdrift. Scholarships, college recruiters, friends, family, the small-town scrutiny, it all threatened to crush the fragile bubble we had built. "We can't hide anymore," I said quietly, my breath fogging the glass. He nodded, his eyes unwavering. "Then we won't. We face it. Together. And if anyone has a problem, we don't need their approval." The courage in his voice bolstered me. Slowly, carefully, we stepped out of the car and into the winter-chilled air, ready to confront the consequences of living our truth. The first confrontation was inevitable. Sean's parents, protective and cautious, had called a meeting at their home. I held Dylan's hand tightly as we walked in, the weight of expectation pressing on us from every direction. Sean stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, a mixture of apprehension and concern etched across his face. "Are you two ready to explain yourselves?" his mother asked, voice calm but firm. Dylan straightened, stepping forward. "Yes, we care about each other. We've been careful, but we're tired of hiding. We're serious about this relationship, and we want your support not for validation, but because it matters to us." I watched as Sean's parents exchanged a glance, tension giving way to understanding. "We just want both of you to be safe," his father said finally, "and happy. It's not easy, but we see that you care for each other. That matters more than anything." The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. Sean's eyes met mine across the room, and for the first time, I saw pride there instead of confusion or hurt. He gave a small, approving nod. "I guess you're really in this, huh?" "Yes," I said, squeezing Dylan's hand. "And we're not backing down." Winter break arrived, and with it, the freedom to escape the scrutinizing eyes of school and small-town life. Dylan and I spent long days walking through snow-dusted parks, evenings curled up in front of the fireplace at my house, and nights talking endlessly about dreams, fears, and the future. Each moment was a testament to our resilience, our love, and our willingness to fight for something that felt impossible just months before. One particularly quiet evening, as snowflakes swirled outside my bedroom window, Dylan turned to me with a solemn expression. "I've been thinking about college, about what comes next. And I don't want to be apart from you." I swallowed hard, emotions knotting in my throat. "I don't either. But life doesn't always let us choose." "Then we make it work," he said firmly. "Distance, schedules, everything. If we love each other, we fight for it. That's the only rule I'm following." And in that moment, I believed him. I believed in us. The challenges of winter didn't vanish, but they became manageable. With Sean's tentative support, our circle of friends began to adjust, and even those initially skeptical found themselves warming to the undeniable bond between Dylan and me. Our relationship became an example not of recklessness, but of courage, honesty, and emotional truth. One evening, as the town prepared for the annual winter festival, Dylan and I wandered through twinkling lights, the cold air filled with laughter and music. We paused near the frozen pond, the glow of string lights reflecting in the icy surface. "I never thought we'd get here," I admitted, my voice soft. "From that first chaotic morning to now." He took my hand, squeezing it, eyes shining. "I always knew it was worth it. Every risk, every fear led us here." We leaned into each other, the cold forgotten, hearts warmed by proximity and shared triumph. And when our lips met in a long, lingering kiss beneath the twinkling lights, the world faded away. The whispers, the judgment, the past fears, they didn't exist in that moment. There was only us. Graduation approached, bringing with it a flurry of decisions, applications, and farewells. Dylan had multiple college offers, some out of state, some local, all contingent on maintaining his athletic and academic performance. I faced my own challenges, balancing school, friendships, and the growing intensity of our relationship. But we navigated it together, each step cementing our commitment. Late nights became our sanctuary, shared study sessions our routine, and moments of quiet intimacy a reminder that love, even amidst chaos, could endure. Finally, the day came when Dylan had to decide on a college. We sat together in his bedroom, the letter in his hands trembling slightly. "It's all or nothing," he said, glancing at me with a mixture of fear and hope. "Then we do it," I said, my voice steady. "Together." He smiled, relief and determination mingling in his expression. Together. The months that followed were a blur of goodbyes, new beginnings, and the solidification of a love that had once been whispered in secret and now stood openly, boldly, and undeniably in the light. College brought new challenges, but also opportunities for growth, independence, and shared adventure. We adapted, learned, and thrived not just as a couple, but as individuals who had discovered the strength to pursue authenticity in a world that often demanded conformity. And through it all, the core truth remained. We had risked everything for each other, navigated fear, judgment, and heartbreak, and emerged stronger, bound by love, trust, and a shared vision of the future. One winter evening, standing on the balcony of our shared apartment, looking out over the city lights, I realized how far we had come. The journey had been messy, painful, exhilarating, and beautiful all at once. Dylan's hand in mine was steady, familiar, and comforting, a reminder that no matter what storms came, we faced them together. "I love you," I whispered, the words simple, profound, and inevitable. "I love you too," he replied, pressing his forehead against mine. "Always have, always will." The city stretched endlessly before us, a tapestry of lights and life, but in that moment, we were the center of our own universe. Two boys, once caught in chaos and fear, now standing proudly in love, defying expectation, embracing the future. And as snow began to fall gently, coating the world in quiet brilliance, we held each other close, knowing that the journey ahead would be long, but also that it would be ours shared, unshakable, and infinite. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.